The broadcast opened like any other night of political commentary, with the panelists exchanging polite remarks and the host trying to keep the conversation steady. But within seconds, the atmosphere shifted. Jasmine Crockett leaned forward, her voice cutting through the chatter with the kind of precision that made the entire studio freeze. She didn't waste time on introductions or rehearsed pleasantries. She looked directly across the table at Donald Trump and said, "Since you insist on telling America you have nothing to hide, maybe tonight is the right time to talk about the deal you thought would never see the light of day." The words landed like a strike of lightning. The audience gasped, the host blinked in shock, and for a brief moment the camera seemed to linger on Trump's face as he struggled to register what had just been said. Crockett wasn't hinting, she was declaring. This wasn't rumor or speculation, it was an accusation on live television, delivered with the kind of confidence that suggested she had more to back it up. Trump shifted in his seat, his usual smirk replaced with the sharp tension of someone realizing the fight had already begun. Crockett pressed forward, raising her voice so there could be no mistaking her tone. "You made promises behind closed doors, and those promises carried a price. Do you really want me to spell it out here in front of the nation?" The studio erupted in murmurs. Some shouted in disbelief, others clapped in approval, and the host desperately tried to restore order. But the hook was already set. Crockett had turned the spotlight directly onto Trump, forcing him to respond or risk letting the accusation dominate the entire night. Trump leaned toward his microphone, his voice trembling with the first sparks of anger. "That's a lie, a disgusting, fabricated lie, and you know it." But Crockett didn't blink. She let the denial hang in the air, then delivered the line that sealed the moment. "Then tell America what you were doing when you promised favors to people whose names you swore would never come out." The tension was unbearable. The audience sat on edge, waiting for what would come next. This wasn't just political theater. This was war, live, and unfiltered. The cameras widened to capture the full panel. It was supposed to be a routine debate, one of those round table discussions where politicians spar for sound bites and the host tries to balance the chaos. On one side sat Donald Trump, visibly restless, his hands gripping the edge of the table. Across from him was Jasmine Crockett, eyes fixed, voice sharp, her reputation for fearless confrontation already known to anyone who had followed her career. Between them, the host sat stiffly, caught in the crossfire of a storm that was spiraling out of control. The other panelists, commentators, former aides, and a pair of journalists shifted nervously in their seats. Some looked stunned, others tried to hide the anticipation that this might become the headline moment of the week. Every second of silence carried more weight than the loudest applause, and the viewers at home could feel it through the screen. Trump was not a stranger to confrontation. For years, he had thrived on it, built his brand on it, and dominated headlines with it. But this was different. The arena was live television, the subject was his integrity, and the opponent was a congresswoman who knew how to turn every phrase into a dagger. Crockett wasn't just a guest on the show. She had stepped into the role of prosecutor, forcing Trump into the defendant's chair without warning. The host tried to restore balance, raising his hand and reminding everyone to keep it civil. But civil was already off the table. Trump's voice cracked with anger as he repeated, "This is fake news. This is the same garbage they've been throwing at me for years." His supporters in the audience cheered, but it only made Crockett's next move sharper. She responded coolly, "If this were fake, you wouldn't be shaking right now." The line hit like a whip, and the room broke into shouts, some gasping, others applauding. The studio lights reflected off Trump's face, and for the first time in the segment, his confidence seemed to flicker. Around the country, televisions blared with the unfolding drama. Social media feeds lit up instantly. Viewers clipped the exchange and shared it within seconds, captions screaming, "Trump cornered by Crockett." Others defended him, flooding platforms with hashtags and defiant slogans. But the fact remained, everyone was watching, and no one could look away. The panel had been stacked to represent balance. 2 Trump loyalists, 2 critics, and the host in the middle. But balance collapsed as soon as Crockett dropped her revelation. The loyalists tried to interject, shouting about partisan witch hunts and political theater, but their voices were drowned out by the electricity of the confrontation. The critics leaned in, ready to push harder, sensing that Crockett had opened a door that could not easily be closed. It was no longer just an argument, it was the start of an unraveling, a moment where politics turned into spectacle, and spectacle turned into something far more dangerous for the man who had built his career on always staying in control. Crockett didn't hesitate. She knew this was the moment to drive straight into the heart of the matter. Leaning forward, she spoke with deliberate clarity. "You've told this country over and over again that you don't bow to anyone, that you can't be bought. But what about the meetings in Florida in the spring of 2019? What about the conversations with the businessmen who stood to profit if you returned to power?" The room went dead silent, except for the audible gasp from one of the panelists. Trump's face flushed red, and he immediately pounded the table. "Lies! Complete lies! That never happened. You're fabricating this like you always do." But Crockett didn't flinch. She lifted a small stack of papers, tapping them against the desk so the microphone caught the sound. "Notes from the meetings, witness accounts, people who were in the room when you promised favorable treatment in exchange for support." She didn't hand them over, didn't wave them around. She simply placed them in front of her like a silent weapon. The host stammered, trying to interrupt. "Congresswoman, are you alleging—" Crockett cut him off. "I'm not alleging. I'm stating. He cut deals in private while telling the American people he was fighting for them. That is the truth he doesn't want exposed tonight." The audience erupted. Some shouted, "Yes!" while others booed, creating a wall of noise that shook the studio. Trump's allies on the panel jumped in, shouting over Crockett. One slammed his hand down, yelling, "This is a smear! This is nothing but theater!" But Crockett raised her voice above the chaos. "If it's theater, why does he look like a man caught with his hand in the safe?" The blow landed. Trump leaned forward, eyes wide, his voice rising to a roar. "You're a disgrace! You think you can sit there and make up stories about me? You're nothing but a fraud!" Crockett, calm but piercing, answered, "The fraud is the one who shakes hands in the dark and denies it in the light." The words cut deep, and the audience howled. Commentators across the country, watching live, would later call it one of the sharpest exchanges ever seen on television. Social media exploded with clips, some praising Crockett as fearless, others branding her a reckless opportunist. But what everyone agreed on was this: the confrontation had crossed into uncharted territory. For every denial Trump shouted, Crockett responded with a detail. Dates, names, the suggestion of amounts exchanged. None of it proven in that instant, but every word sharpened the perception that she had him cornered. And in politics, perception was often more devastating than fact. The host lost control entirely. The panel was shouting over each other, the audience was divided into chants and boos, and Trump's voice thundered above the din. "I will not sit here and be attacked with lies on national television." But Crockett had already shifted the balance. She looked into the camera, bypassing Trump, bypassing the host, and spoke directly to the viewers at home. "America deserves to know who he's really working for, because it was never you." The silence that followed was deafening. Trump opened his mouth to respond, but for the first time, words seemed to fail him. The studio lights seemed hotter, the air heavier. Trump leaned back, shaking his head, muttering under his breath, trying to gather the fire he was known for. But Crockett wasn't finished. She had saved the sharpest blade for last. She spoke slowly, every word carved like stone. "You told the nation you never owed anyone. Yet you promised land rights and access to government contracts in exchange for private backing. You did it in Palm Beach, and one of the men sitting at that table has already testified under oath." The eruption was instant. Trump slammed his fist on the table so hard the microphones rattled. His voice thundered through the studio. "That is a filthy lie! I never made any such promise! This is disgraceful! You're attacking me, my family, my reputation, everything I've built! How dare you!" Audience members leapt to their feet, half of them cheering, half of them booing, the noise spiraling out of control. The host raised his hands, shouting for order, but his voice was drowned out by Trump's booming rage. "You think you can stand there and accuse me?" Trump roared, pointing directly at Crockett. "You're a fraud, a political hack, nothing more. You'll pay for this smear. People will see through your lies. They always do." Crockett didn't flinch. She didn't even raise her voice. She just looked at him with unwavering calm and replied, If I'm lying, then why does the testimony exist? Why do the documents match your own schedule? You can scream, but the truth doesn't go away. That line stopped the room cold. Even over the chaos, even over Trump's shouting, it rang clear. The other panelists sat frozen, some pale, others stunned by the audacity of what had just been said. The audience fell into an uneasy mix of cheers and stunned silence. Trump exploded again, his face red, his voice cracking with fury. "This is a witch hunt, the biggest witch hunt in history. You're destroying this country with your lies." He pounded the desk, his words almost incoherent now, the fury pouring out unrestrained. Crockett leaned slightly closer to her microphone and delivered the line that no one in the studio would forget. "What's destroying this country isn't my words. It's your deals." The silence after that sentence lasted only a moment, but it felt eternal. Then the audience erupted again, the noise rattling the walls, the debate collapsing into pandemonium. In living rooms across America, millions watched, some cheering, some outraged, but all transfixed. The climax had arrived. Trump had exploded, and in doing so, confirmed to many that Crockett's words had struck a nerve too close to ignore. The shouting died down only because the host demanded a break. But before the cameras could cut, Crockett seized the last word. She leaned forward, her voice steady, controlled, and unshakable. "America has a choice," she said. "It can keep pretending these secret dealings don't exist, or it can face the truth head on. Because no man, no matter how powerful, is bigger than the people." The studio went still. Trump tried to interject, his mouth opening to unleash another tirade, but for once his words were swallowed by the weight of the silence that followed Crockett's declaration. The host's attempt to move on felt hollow, because everyone knew the moment had already been sealed. On social media, clips of Trump's outburst and Crockett's final line spread like wildfire. Hashtags flooded timelines. Hashtag Trump explodes and hashtag Crockett reveals shot to the top within minutes. Supporters of Trump posted defenses, calling it a hit job, while critics hailed it as a moment of reckoning. Commentators scrambled to rewrite their talking points, acknowledging that the exchange had shifted the conversation in a way no one could have scripted. By morning, headlines blared, "Crockett stuns Trump on live TV," "Trump explodes under pressure," and "secret deals exposed." The country split instantly, but the impact was undeniable. Crockett's words echoed on every platform, dissected in podcasts, debated in newsrooms, and replayed endlessly on television screens. Trump himself emerged from the studio still fuming, his team rushing to spin the eruption as passion, strength, proof of his fight. But the images told a different story. A man rattled, cornered, his fury transforming into a spectacle that even his allies struggled to control. For Crockett, the night was more than a clash. It was a statement of defiance, proof that even the most untouchable figures could be forced to answer for their shadows. Her final words, replayed again and again, became the marker of the night. "What's destroying this country isn't my words. It's your deals." The debate ended, but the story was just beginning. For millions watching, it was more than television. It was the unveiling of a fault line in American politics, a moment that would ripple through campaigns, rallies, and living rooms for weeks to come. Trump exploded, Crockett revealed, and the world watched as the balance shifted before their eyes.